All right. Hi, my name is Leah McAdams, and today I am going to be presenting the fast fashion systems model. So, to begin, we're just going to go over some of the elements of fast fashion in regards to the system. So, to begin off, globalization has led to a higher variety of clothing available. This is just talking about how throughout the world, it's more easily accessible to get a high variety of clothes. And with fast fashion, this just means that because of trends and because of this high variety, clothing is made faster and at a higher rate. Um, Another element is large amounts of textile waste is made from fast fashion. Because of ever-changing trends, oftentimes there is leftover pieces of clothing from when they're made. So it basically just means that it gets thrown away at the end of the whole overall process. Another element is the working conditions are often poor and the wage is low for the actual employees that make the fast fashion. This does also lead to like high turnover rates for like workers in those areas. They also oftentimes come from lower income countries and families. Um, One other element is that cheaper clothing prices lead to a higher rate of consumer production. So fast fashion is a very cheap thing that people make all the time. So basically, it just means you don't spend as much money on the actual clothing. So then you are able to sell them for cheaper amounts of money too, which makes consumers buy more of it more often. And since trends do change, oftentimes the clothing does get thrown away very easily, which also ends up in landfills. And then one of the other elements is that social media use allows for trends to change quickly concerning fashion. This like works into everything else. Basically, it's just a high turnover for more clothing to be produced quicker and sooner, which leads to lots of pollution and other things of that sort. Um, some of the interconnections within the fast fashion industry, again, social media changes trends very quickly. Influencers and other social media people will use their brands to voice their opinions onto people. Oftentimes, this does change up clothing trends very quickly. Most of the audience buys the cheaper knockoffs, leading to fast fashion purchasing. Um, Again, fast production leads to more pollution. Making clothes quickly leads to improper production habits. This includes using unsustainable materials, releasing more CO2 into the atmosphere, improper water use, chemical runoff, and increased production of microplastics. Uh, Keeping up with demand means spending less on production. So, with the constantly changing trends, making sure the clothes are cheap is an important factor for this system. This leads to unsustainable production methods along with unfair wages for the workers. And then mass production leads to landfill waste. With ever-changing trends, a lot of the clothes often end up in landfills due to either the consumer throwing it out or the producer getting rid of extra clothing stock. And then the overall purpose for this system is to keep up with current clothing trends at a fast rate while also spending minimal money on production. Okay. And then to get into the actual system, I'm going to start over here with clothing trends. So this can go in a few different like areas or ways. So clothing trends often lead to clothing production. So there's a new trend. The fast fashion companies will work almost instantly to make the new um, clothes. This leads to the fast fashion companies having a big clothing inventory. So this is like all the back stock and the things that they sell from those places. Um, Within this, you go over here to purchasing behavior. This has to do a lot with the consumers. And oftentimes, the purchasing behavior increases the need for people to have more clothes, which leads to a larger consumer wardrobe size. This does go off. over here to textile and landfill waste. So oftentimes the clothings are made very cheaply, so they will dispose of the clothing, or once the trend is done, they will get rid of them sooner. So yeah, it leads to textile and landfill waste. Going back over to clothing inventory, there are also many off branches from this. Clothing inventory increases pollution levels. Making all of these clothing, like all of these pieces of clothes, leads to higher emissions being released into the atmosphere. This is due to a lot of different things, including natural resource use and just like the materials they use. Um, Again, over here, there is a lot of wear and tear on the material. Sometimes it's not made in the best conditions, so the quality of the material leads to the producers oftentimes throwing out the clothing. So that also increases the textile landfill waste. Um, if we go back over here to clothing trends, we can go to natural resources. So there is resource extraction to make the clothes. Oftentimes, the materials used in fast fashion is made from like the natural resources. Basically, they use a lot of things. Some of the synthetic materials in the fabric are used making like fuel and stuff, or like the excess from the fuel. Um, they also use a lot of water in the production, and oftentimes the water does get polluted from that. There's a lot of runoff that is incorporated with making clothes. So natural resources lead to clothing production, clothing inventory. So this does kind of connect. Natural resources also, the use of it does increase pollution levels. There are different government regulations throughout different countries where they make them. Oftentimes, fast fashion and clothing is not produced in the countries that have a lot of government regulations. They are able to get away with using more natural resources, which in turn increases the pollution level. Um, Going back to clothing trends again, we can see that corporate profits do play a big part in this. So with the trend cycles, that also it always increases the need for clothes. And since there is such a fast turnover, um, they do make a big profit off of this. Clothing trends again, and then going into labor capacity and hiring labor. So because the trends are so fast, they do need a good amount of people actually working to increase that labor capacity and to make the clothes. But since the conditions are poor, there is a lot of worker turnover. So they have to work at this again and again to get more people, and it kind of does just end there. Labor capacity also, the production cost is very low. So they don't pay their workers that much. So it does increase corporate profits as well. So that is another aspect of that. Um, but yeah, so that is the fast fashion systems model that I came up with. Um, Thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed. And then at the end over here, I do have all of the sites that I used. So yeah, thank you.